Hello, everyone. Good day, good day, good day. How are you? This is Power Hour Coaching, and I'm Bernadette Boas of Ball of Fire Coaching. And we bring this hour to you each and every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time as a way of getting you the opportunity to get any questions or challenges you're dealing with at work or even in life, so you can keep moving forward and be the powerhouse leader that you're meant to be. And if you do happen to check in across any of the platforms that we're broadcasting on, which is our Shift to Riches Facebook page and Twitter page, we're on LinkedIn, and we're even on our Bernadette Boas YouTube channel. So if you happen to have a question or a challenge that you're dealing with that you would love some support and some help and guidance on, then feel free to place it in the comment section, and I'll be checking the comment section out for it. At the same time, you can even join me live in studio by sharing in the comment section that you'd love to have a one-on-one with me, and I can send you a link and you can join me right here. All right. Now, let me profile what we're going to discuss today beyond whatever it is that you might be wanting to discuss yourself. We're going to talk about conflict. And we're going to talk about what it looks like, what the impact of it is, and how you can best handle conflict, because we all have it in our work and in our life. And then we're going to get into trust. And basically what happens when you lose trust, or what do you need to do to gain trust from other people that you might be working with, that you might be engaging with, whatever the case might be. And therefore, kind of what do you need to kind of consider. Now, at the same time, I'm going to talk about how these two critical, vital elements of a relationship actually layer on each other. And we'll discuss exactly where that stems from and get into all of that as well. But if you should have a question or a challenge yourself, don't hesitate. Don't hesitate to throw it out there in the comment section and let me help you. Let me provide you some tips and strategies so you can keep moving forward. All right. Excuse me. Now, at any time, you can always learn more about myself and Ball of Fire Coaching at 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐿𝐴.com. And I had mentioned over the last couple of sessions, a couple of our powerhouse sessions, that we just deployed our new 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐴Coaching.com website. So take a look and let me know if there's any way we can help you and support you in what it is that you're working your little tail off to achieve. All right. Again, that's 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐴Coaching.com. And you'll have to excuse me. I've been talking a lot this week and even today. So my throat's a little bit dry. Okay. So we want to talk about conflict. And if you look up if you Google it or look it up in the dictionary, you'll find that they pretty much just keep it really simple and say, well, it could be about a serious disagreement. Other places might call it a clash. And I would have to say that in the work that I do and the people that I interact with and the clients that I have, conflict is oftentimes too strong of a word for what it is that you're struggling with in regards to having difficult conversations, having challenging conversations, having disagreements with one another. So I would probably take clash out, and I would take the serious part of the serious disagreement that the dictionary might give you, and just simply say it could be a disagreement. It could be a differing opinion. It could be the fact that you do have a very difficult conversation that you need to have with someone, especially from a work perspective. It could be about poor performance. It could be about misconduct. It could be about the fact that you have to, kind of give someone a performance improvement plan. And that's not often comfortable. People view it as conflict. And it could get to the point where you have to terminate somebody. It could even be, from a work perspective, it could be the fact that, you have to go into deliberations or arbitration or negotiations. And therefore, it's any real situation that you feel that could get heated in some way, shape, or form, whether that's emotionally, whether that is behaviorally or even verbally. And, therefore, there are extremes to how people view conflict. I would prefer you looking at conflict as merely um, a differing of views, opinions, decisions, and therefore a conversation that needs to happen. A conversation that actually, I'll often call it like popcorn. It's often like where you're sharing in the asking questions and listening for understanding. You're sharing in the raising up of whatever it is that is getting in the way of you and this individual or group of people are able to be effective or productive. And it's really just ensuring that everyone has their part. I can even call it their turn to be heard. And therefore, then you can get into active discussion around those differences. And again, it's just a conversation like, okay, so help me understand why you feel my idea sucks. Help me understand why you have the view that you have. Again, if you go at it in a way of, okay, so I need to understand where this emotion's coming from, where this differing of opinions coming from, where this view is coming from, where this action or behavior is coming from. So if you actually walk into any difficult conversation, any conflict, to genuinely want to understand, even if it's all being thrown at you, maybe, there's something that occurred between you and someone else, and you feel the weight of being blamed or accused or disrespected, however it might be, as opposed to what 99.9% of the people do, and that is react emotionally, especially they'll throw in their emotions there. Instead, what I'd like you to be able to do is, pause, take a breath, kind of, and we'll talk about this, but kind of then consider your own contribution to it. And then approach that conflict in such a way that it's actually a win-win for everyone. And a win-win could mean that you just simply agree to disagree. Okay. So we'll get into that. And again, if you have any comments, if you have any questions, if you have any situations when it comes to conflict, then post them and I'd be more than happy to make sure that they're addressed while we're discussing it. All right. So again, conflict, people have varying definitions on what that looks like, how it feels, what it means to them. And at the same time, it really should just be kind of a bringing together of, liked minds, maybe differing minds actually, and working through what those differences or what that issue or conflict is. So that's the first thing that I would have you do is kind of turn down the barometer, the heat barometer of what conflict really is about. Because the world it's critical that we have conflict. In relationships, it's critical we have conflict. In business, it's critical that there's conflict and then there's ways of addressing conflict in such a way that's healthy, productive, respectful, because without it, oh my God, it'd be awfully boring if we all had the same opinions. We all agreed with one another. We all, it's kind of a harmony, in everything that we do. And we have a lot of yes people around us. And you'll find from any leader that they'll say, I don't want yes people on my team. I don't want people to always agree with me or with each other. And yet that so often happens simply because no one wants to offend or hurt or disappoint somebody. So the biggest reasonings that I'm always given when it comes to people that come and ask about how do I handle this difficult situation, the first thing I'm going to ask is, why do you think it's difficult? Why is it uncomfortable for you? And they're human, right? We're all human. We don't want to disappoint or hurt somebody. And that's what they'll say. I would prefer you looking at it as you are simply looking to develop, mentor, coach, provide constructive feedback that will help improve someone. And you're looking for some change and some adjustment in maybe what someone's doing that could actually be not only hurting you in such a way, but it could be self-sabotaging them. And maybe it's a blind spot. Right now, I know a good number of my clients are going through mid-year performance reviews. And, many of them are asking me for my input and my thoughts and whatnot toward how they're going to approach it. I certainly don't have input to the performance review itself, but certainly how they're going to approach it. And I love when individuals, executives, leaders, whomever are aware of, I'm not comfortable with it, so I'm going to ask for some expert advice. And that's what I'm here for. So it's really all about that planning and that preparation of how you're going to address it and how you're going to say what you need to say without it creating challenge and issue for you as well as for the other person. All right. So, excuse me. So realize that one, conflict is vital. And if you don't like the word conflict, because I get that a lot too, then call it something else. If that makes you feel more receptive and more engaging in, having those difficult conversations, addressing those disagreements, kind of rectifying someone's viewpoint or belief system that may not align with yours. So just be really careful and be very open to the fact that you need conflict in order to be innovative, in order to, create change, in order for you to, you and your team or your company to kind of really move forward and grow, especially in these trying times that we have. If you're not embracing change right now, even looking at what might come down the road, whether it's tomorrow, 6 months from now, or a year, then that's going to create even more inner conflict for you than necessary. So just kind of be open and embrace the fact that conflict is going to be in your life at work and at home. And therefore, how do you receive it and how do you handle it and manage it and lean into it so then it's a win-win for everybody. Okay. So I just want to kind of just walk through some things that you could be doing to kind of be good with conflict, be okay with feedback, be okay with having difficult conversations and being uncomfortable. Like get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And certainly conflict allows, all of us to get uncomfortable in some way, shape, or form. Now, on the other extreme, I do want to mention this. On the other extreme, there are some people that are very comfortable walking into conflict. But I even have to, as a coach, even have to kind of watch that because some people feed into it. They look for it. They want it. You would think the media is in that camp because, why do we watch TV and get hooked on certain things? Because there's so much drama and conflict, yet we don't necessarily want to be in the middle of it, right? And so I, as a coach, would look at both things. And what I would recommend, or I'm sorry, both approaches, those people that are hesitant to get engaged with conflict and those that welcome it, those extremes are things that not right or wrong, but things that definitely need to be paid attention to. I will share with you that, because I'm an open book, that in my past, going back 12, 14, 20 years, I looked for it. I sought it out. I created a lot of conflict. And you do have those individuals. And I'd be very interested to know if any of you know individuals that walk in and they actually look for and create conflict. Because if you say no, then you're not, kind of coming in contact with a lot of bullies, a lot of narcissists, a lot of egomaniacs that are out there. And I could throw myself into those camps in my past life. So I certainly understand what it means to be the provoker of it and how it negatively impacts you and everyone else around. But at the same time, how you can overcome it and how you can actually not create it. But if it's there, be very productive and effective in handling it without the drama and without the chaos internally or externally. Okay. So here are some things that you could be thinking about when it comes to conflict. The first question I would ask anyone is, what is your perception of it? Like, what comes up for you? What are your emotions around it? What are your experiences around conflict? I had a recent client who said to me that because of the fact that there was a challenging conversation going on in a meeting, and it was a leadership team type of meeting, well, but it was a much larger, not just their immediate team, but multiple teams. And so there was a large crowd, and she brought up a differing opinion to what was being discussed from the senior leaders. And she was pretty much shut down right then and there. And basically her response to it was that she felt as if she's not being heard, but more importantly, that her opinion wasn't valued. And therefore, she responded, and we often do. It's kind of a knee-jerk reaction. We want to make a response to it, and that didn't help at all. And so now, and this is like 2, 3, 4 years later, she is hesitant to get into any type of conflict, confrontation, difficult conversation, because she was already shut down and kind of embarrassed, or made to be embarrassed and humiliated. And there's a number of other words that she used. And therefore she doesn't even, lean into it. And so then all of a sudden what you're creating in that regard for yourself and from, the others around you, is that you're getting a lot of yes people, or you're getting people that just won't come face to face with whether it is breaks in the system, poor performance, misconduct, disagreements, and as simple as just differing opinions. And that's dangerous for any of us leaders out there, whether you're working for yourself or for someone else. That's a dangerous place to be, because again, we don't want yes people, and we need conflict to create new innovations, new ideas, develop our businesses, and grow within ourselves and with the others around us. So I would start asking yourself first questions about, what is your perception? What's your reaction? What's your response to conflict? And then why? Why do you feel that way? Because again, like I said, some people kind of create it. And I would ask that person that, and I asked myself that for a long, long time. So, some people want to create it. Some people are okay with it and don't have a difficult time with it. And therefore, they lean into it. And then others are very uncomfortable with it. And, and you can't judge, and you shouldn't judge. You can't judge any one of those differing opinions, or differing approaches, or differing beliefs and perceptions and experiences. Because that's the next thing. What experiences or situations have you had with conflict that has caused your reaction to it, your response or lack of response? Because again, like her, you could have had a very trying, embarrassing type of situation in the past that you might not even be kind of consciously aware that it's impacting you today, but it is. And therefore, you really need to pay attention to what are those triggers, what are those past experiences, encounters, events that have occurred that could be causing your fear of conflict today. And if you're, because I work with anyone from kind of middle management to C-level executives and entrepreneurs. And if you're in any one of those roles and capacities, then you need to get over that, and you need to identify it so you can push through it, because you have to be able to deal with conflict in your role. All right. So consider the why, consider where it's coming from, the experiences, the events, the encounters that you've had in the past. And then as you think about confronting that conflict, like approaching it. And I don't want to kind of walk into it really soft and cushiony, and approach is more soft and cushiony than the fact that you have to confront conflict, period, end of story. even if it's a disagreement, even if it's a difficult conversation, even if it's a butting of the heads or styles and personalities or behaviors. So position it the way that will make you comfortable, but not too comfortable. All right. And formulate as you start to confront that conflict. It could be the fact that you are in a business meeting and a subject is brought up. Maybe it's a initiative someone wants to start pursuing and you have a differing opinion or you disagree, or you think it's not the smartest next step for you or your team. The one thing I always will share with people about how you confront difficult situations is you look at what's in it for the other person. So you're actually putting yourself aside and you're thinking, what's in it for the other person? What is there to be gained or lost? What's the positive or the negative for the other person if this issue doesn't get addressed? If we don't confront it, if we aren't open about it, if we're not honest, if we're not candid, what is the impact, positive or negative, to the other person? At the same time, you're also thinking about, all right, so what is the benefit or the impact to me, negatively or positively as well? And on that last note, a lot of us create a hill out of, no, I'm not very good with analogies. A lot of us will create a bigger issue than there actually is. A lot of us choose to fight the small fights or conflicts, as opposed to saying to myself, what's in it for them, good or bad? What's in it for me? Is this worth it? Is this worth the fight? Is this worth the confrontation? Is this worth the difficult conversation? Is this worth the conflict? And before you actually do it, ask yourself that question, because a lot of times there's no need for it. It's just something that's just not important, valuable, priority, and therefore should be put aside. But if there's any aspect of it that is especially negatively impacting you, whether that's you're doing it to yourself or someone else is doing it to you, then you definitely want to be sure that you're addressing it. But you would first want to at least go into asking yourself, what's in it for me, negatively or positively, that I confront this? But then I want you to also consider the other person as well. Because the one thing about any disagreement, about any differing opinion, about any conflict or confrontation or difficult conversation, it should be a win-win at the end. It should be a win-win for both parties at the end. And that's probably the trickiest part for a lot of managers out there. And I'm using the word manager versus leader because leaders know better. Managers, they oftentimes will just head into addressing or confronting a situation, and it's a barrage of statements or commands or demands, as opposed to an active conversation, of which a lot of questions are being asked by both parties. Both parties are having an opportunity to share their thoughts about something. They're actually being heard. So both parties are actively listening. So the other party feels like they're heard. They're seeking understanding as opposed to just drawing their own conclusions and judgments and assumptions. And therefore, at the end of it, they may not even agree, or they may not even, come together, supporting or changing or making an adjustment, and they agree to disagree. And yet that's the end point. That's a win-win. Is, okay, can we agree to disagree on this subject then? And can we put it aside so it's no longer a conflict? So it's really important that after you kind of consider your own why, do you have this issue with conflict and confronting it? And you consider the experiences, events, and encounters that you've had in the past, formulate for yourself what's in it for you to confront this, and get it resolved, or at least get it to a point of satisfaction for all parties, and what's in it for the other person. Now, the reason of why you want to think about what's in it for the other person is if you know what the positive or negative impact is, maybe you know what their goals and objectives, and some people, to kind of elevate the seriousness of it, might say what their agenda is. If you understand that, what their motivations are, aspirations, then you could position this conflict discussion in such a way that you know what's in it for you, and you can also voice what's in it for them. So let me give you an example. So if you find that maybe it's a peer and they're just not performing the way they need to be performing, maybe their behavior, is not only jeopardizing themselves but jeopardizing a project that's being worked on, and therefore ultimately kind of the team, the business results, whatever the case might be. And so someone needs to talk to them. And if you are a peer, then it is your role and responsibility to ensure that your peers are being held accountable. And you should have that trust level, in order to, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but in order to go to this individual and bring this issue up. Okay. So if you know, for instance, that this individual has plans for advancement, has aspirations to get promoted, and have these very ambitious goals for themselves, and yet that their behavior or their performance is jeopardizing that, then that's the opening of your conversation. So it doesn't have to be conflict. It can just simply be, "Hey, Joe, I'd like to talk to you about something because I know you have, aspirations to get this promotion, in the next 6 to 12 months. And yet I think there's something that is going to hold you back from doing that. And therefore, I just want to be sure that you're aware of it in case you're not, or in case someone hasn't brought it up to you before, so forth and so on." And you can then go into the conversation. You can ask them initially, "Are you open to that?" And you would hope that they would say yes. But I've had some situations where someone said, "No, it's none of your business." And and then you definitely, again, that's conflict, right? And you want to approach that. Well, I just want to be sure that, that even though you may not want to hear it, it's in your best interest because of the fact that it could be hurting you down the line. And you're always kind of putting that what's in it for them in front of them. Because if they start feeling that, okay, their goal, their aspiration, their expectations are at risk, then they might even thank you for bringing it up to them, because a lot of us have blind spots as to how we're performing and how we're being perceived, and it's critical that it's brought up to them and those blind spots are cleared, because if not, it's not fair. It's not fair to them. So you hope it's happening kind of, formally through maybe performance reviews, boss feedback, so forth and so on. But, oftentimes it's not. And therefore, if you're, in the role and the position and the leadership that you are, then I would also suggest that you take that leadership role and help and support that person. All right. So formulate the what's in it for you and what's in it for them, because again, your goal is to make this a win-win conversation. And then, what I definitely would want you to ensure that you do is, you approach the conversation very unemotionally, very calm, cool, and collected. And at the same time, you're considering that if this individual all of a sudden gets emotional or, gets a little bit elevated, or heated, then you can also work to calm that or bring that down. So again, you're thinking about what is that win-win situation that you could be creating, so both of you can walk away from this disagreement or this, hard feedback or whatever the situation might be. And, you're not necessarily hugging and kissing each other, and maybe you've even agreed to disagree, but you're walking away and there's still respect and trust and consideration for each other and alignment with each other. And so that's kind of an approach that you could be taking, whether it is, having to give hard feedback, or even moving someone from giving feedback in the past, they haven't performed. Now you're moving them into more of a performance improvement where their job could be at risk at some point. Maybe it's even when you're sitting down and having to terminate someone. Any type of difficult conversation, poor behavior, poor performance. It can be positioned in such a way where it's just merely constructive, productive, almost mentoring and coaching and personal development of that individual. And if you keep in mind the win-win for both of you, and you keep in mind what's in it for them, as far as what is that positive, negative impact to them, as well as to yourself, then you're kind of covering all your bases. Now, that's not to say, and I'm not being unrealistic about the fact that you could come face to face with some conflict that you have no time to prepare for, and that you have no, even warning that it's coming. And of course, you're not going to be, spending the time to formulate everything that we just talked about. I would challenge you and suggest to you that even if it does get kind of in your face, so to speak, doesn't mean you have to respond and react to it right then and there. So, you might get somebody that, comes and, puts something right in front of you, and you say, I'm not, I'm not totally open to how you're approaching me or coming at me. And therefore I'm going to walk away. I'm going to let you cool off, and I'm going to get my head around, what it is that we need to talk about. And then we can come back. And I've had to suggest that to clients, especially managers, when they are going to have difficult conversations with their employees, and they're concerned about how their employees are going to react right then and there. And basically I say, make sure that you just stop the conversation, and you kind of raise up that, you're not going to kind of have that heated or that approach being made by that other party, who might justifiably be upset, be emotional. You don't accept being irate or tumultuous, and you just say, you know what, I think it's time that we both kind of take a breath. We kind of gather our thoughts, walk away, and let's agree to come back together in 15 minutes, in an hour, whatever the situation might be. So, whether you're in the grocery store and someone in front of you all of a sudden decides to, go crazy on you, or if it's something that's more not formulated, but more prescribed, of a conflict situation, you have the control and the choice of how you react and respond. And that's the only thing I would want you to keep in mind, is you have a choice of how you respond. You don't have a choice about how someone else is going to react or respond, but you certainly have a choice of what you do about it. And you certainly don't deserve or need to welcome in being harassed or berated or, spooed on. And therefore you can just kind of walk away, yet agree to come back. And if you don't even gain agreement, you go back and you make sure that the situation is taken care of. Okay. Now, and to that latter part about the situation being taken care of, like coming back to it, be sure to come back to it. I can't tell you how many times, my clients will come to me with a situation, ask for advice, get some guidance, go and do it. The situation isn't, productive, isn't great, isn't healthy. They walk away from it, but because of that experience and that event, big or small, they hesitate and they avoid going back to it. You have to go back to it. You have to close it. You have to make sure it's taken care of. All right. Okay. Again, I want to remind you, you could be, posting your questions or your challenges that you have in the comment section, whether you're watching us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or LinkedIn. And I'm keeping an eye out. And that's why you probably see my eyes going back and forth. And I will make sure that it gets addressed while we're here together. Now, if we are post session and you still have a question or a challenge you want discussed, you have two choices. Post it, even on the replayed or the stream that continues to be out there. And I, will get notified and I will make sure I get to you directly. Or you can even schedule some complimentary time with me so we can, kind of get into it and get you moving forward. So you can go to coachmebernadette.com/discovery call if you wanted to do that. All right. Just don't sit there thinking that you have to handle these things on your own. Be sure to know that I am here for you. Okay. All right. So this is going to lead into a great conversation. At least I think so. Into our next conversation, maybe I should say, around trust. Now, both of these subjects, and I, wanted to save it for when we talk about this. Both of these subjects are topics and issues and functions in the workplace that I do a great deal of coaching and consulting and training on. And it just so happens that I've been doing a lot of it on this over the last 6 to 8 months. And therefore, when it's ever brought up to me, which it is often when I'm working with individuals or teams, I definitely want to make sure that you all have, tools and strategies and tips and advice for handling it. Because it is a natural, everyday part of our lives, both at home and at work. And so you getting the best strategies and tips and advice around how to handle it and what it is and how to really kind of approach it, then, that's what I want to do with these Power Hour coaching sessions. All right. But again, you can post your own question or challenge that has nothing to do with conflict or trust at any time. And I'll be sure to get to those as well. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention where this trust and conflict conversation comes from is the work I do also leverages a really key fable, a book. It's called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's from Patrick Lencioni. And I always hope I pronounce his last name correctly. But it's a great and easy but powerful fable. So it's a business book written in the form of a story that sets up a situation or kind of almost you could look at it going, wow, I can relate. And it's a business situation of a company that hires, Let's Go, their old CEO hires a new, actually not Let's Go, demotes their current CEO, hires a new CEO, and the way she approaches, building her team and enriching her team comes under question because it's very challenging. It's very much addressing not, these two elements we're talking about, trust and conflict, but also goes on to address the other 3 that make up the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And that is commitment, accountability, and inattention to results. So we're only addressing these 2 because it's going to be a nice segue into some work I'm doing next week. But at the same time, it's come up quite a few times over the last several weeks. So I thought it would be a great conversation to have with you. And if you have any questions or situations of your own, I would love to help you and provide you some support there. All right. So kind of one of the questions I've been asking a lot to people is, what does trust look like to you when you actually have a trusting relationship? Now, I will say one of my business sponsors / mentors, just gave me a great example when I was talking to her about it over the last couple of days. And she, and it's based on a relationship that she has, a business relationship that she has. And it's a perfect demonstration or illustration of a trusted, bonded, productive, powerful relationship. And these can exist at any level. It can exist between friends or lovers. But it's one that she went on to explain that, it's a peer of hers, will, kind of pick up the phone and call her and ask her for her advice or ask her for her insights or something. And even he needs to validate some things that he's working on or that he's about to position or propose, and he just wants a second, third, fourth ear to, kind of test it out. He will, kind of reach out and raise up a concern or an issue and ask her for her guidance and advice on it. He, really kind of knows that if there are, kind of trying situations that he has to deal with, that he can go to her and she can go to him, and kind of, again, seek that advice, get that input. Even if there's a disagreement between the two, she can kind of tell him, you know what, you're making a really bad decision, or that's really not going to work. And that, that he doesn't get upset. He doesn't, have his ego hurt. He just said, he just has more information, more understanding of what it is that he needs, from that feedback in order for him to, move forward. And it's just one of those things, one of those relationships where kind of there is no ego, there is no apprehension, no hesitation, no fear, to kind of approach or broach difficult conversations or challenging disagreements. And therefore, it's kind of like, I know this person has my back. I know this person will show up and do what they committed or promised to do because they have time and time and time again. And even, when they have disappointed me, it's the type of relationship where I can call them out on it and, there's no hard feelings. So that is what, you're wanting to build in your relationships, both at home and at work. And I wouldn't say more importantly at work, but if you're going to live it in your workplace, whether that's remotely or in a building with people, and you're going to be working and engaging, and relying on, these people that you work with, extensively, because you love your job, you love the company. There might be issues with the people that you work with, but because of the fact that, you have great, like and interest in the job and the company, then you want to work through and build these type of relationships. And you want to not even work through. You might not have any issues, but not having any issues doesn't mean you don't have, or you do have. It doesn't mean you do have trust, and respect for the other people that you're working with. And if you find that you don't in any way, shape, or form, then it's up to you to decide, how do I formulate that trusting, bonded relationship with that individual who I might not know really well, who I might not understand, their capabilities, their skills, their contribution, their value. And as opposed to saying, well, I don't need them, so why do I have to pay attention to them? You kind of welcome the fact that, oh, okay, I need to, get to know this person, because yes, they may not have any direct impact or influence on what it is that I do and what it is that I'm trying to achieve. At the same time, why wouldn't I want to have an individual, especially if they're arm's length away, that I can lean on, that I can seek advice from, that I can have as a confidant, that I can use as a sounding board? Why not? I mean, that's also what your other peers should, and your other teammates throughout your company, throughout your team, throughout business units. That's what they really should be looked at as opportunities for you to provide you that opinion outside of your own, the ideas outside of your own, to give you that guidance, that mentoring, that support, that advocacy, that coaching. So why wouldn't you want to, even if they don't have any way of benefiting you? They absolutely do. It may not be functionally in the role that you're in, but it certainly could be personally or professionally from a development perspective. Okay. And so when you lack trust, I mean, that's just, I was going to say hard, which it is. And then that's just kind of exhausting, and it's disappointing, and it makes you feel demotivated. especially if you think that that trust level goes to the point, or that lack of trust goes to the point where you feel that there's going to be backstabbing, or judgment, or criticism, or ridicule. If you think that there's going to be passive aggressiveness, or there is passive aggressiveness from yourself or from others because of a lack of trust, a lack of knowing, a lack of understanding, a lack of connecting and alignment. And then, basically when you don't have trust, you're not even sure if that person is being honest and open and transparent with you. And yet at the same time, if you could just kind of dismiss it because you feel or think that that's the case, then you're not even putting yourself in a position where you can help yourself and them and the relationship to where you can have a healthy relationship with that individual, even though right now you don't trust them, and or you just don't even know them enough to trust them. So you definitely want to be able to kind of find a way through both of those situations. Maybe it's just somebody you don't know, so you don't know if you can trust them. Or you've had experience with the person, they've disappointed you, or they've done something to lose your trust, and yet this person's still vital to your success and your team's success, and therefore you need to find a solution to it. Again, as leaders, you can't wash your hands of it and ignore it and avoid it and think it's going to go away. You have to be able to, kind of step up, be courageous, put your ego aside and your pride, and deal with it. Okay. So some ways to kind of work through this is to first kind of identify what is causing the breakdown or the mistrust overall between you and someone else, or between you and several people. Where is it coming from? What did it what did it stem from? And kind of really have a clear picture of it. It's almost like you can have two columns, and I say two columns because it'll turn into three, but two columns because one could be just not knowing, really not understanding someone, not having worked or been involved with them for a long periods of time, and that's just a kind of a missing gap. I don't want to call it a lack of trust. That's just a missing gap of trust because there's been no evidence or proof of what it is that you need in order to trust that person. And then the other column would be if there has been evidence of which then you lost trust in that individual. And those could be because, they broke a promise, they backstabbed, they took credit for you. They're not delivering. They're not following through. They're not following up. And therefore you have evidence around why you don't trust someone, put that in the second column. So the first column is where there's just hasn't been an opportunity, new teammate. We've been, separated and remote, for so long that we haven't had the opportunity to really connect and align. And then the second column is the evidence that you have. The third column would be, regardless of which column, the first column or second column, the third column is, okay, what can you do about it? What solutions, what actions, what behaviors can you take in order to rebuild or to gain trust in someone? And I'm pointing it to you because, again, you can't control and you can't influence other people's desire to want to connect, to want to engage, to have that trust. But you can certainly make changes and kind of shift your mindset and your behaviors and your actions in order to rebuild or to gain trust, knowing that it's vital, it's important, it's necessary in order for you and them and the team to be successful. So there's teams that they don't necessarily like each other as people, but they respect each other and they trust each other to then come together and have the best interest of each other and the team in everything that they do. So you don't have to wrap your arms around each other and sing kumbaya, But at the same time, you need to find a way to work toward um, gaining that trust or rebuilding it. So first identify where it's coming from. Now, again, another individual may not have done anything to lose your trust, but you've never allowed or given your trust because of your own past experience or encounter or event. So, the first thing that always jumps in my mind in my conversations with folks when it comes to this is relationships, like love relationships. If you've been hurt before and in such a way that it's left you with not, trusting to open your heart again and put yourself at risk again. Trust me when I say that is very relevant and very translatable to work. If someone screws you over from a work perspective, it doesn't even have to be that same person that now you still don't have a trust level with, because maybe they're acting or they're triggering something within you that's causing you to have that same reaction, response, or fear, lack of trust toward that person. And so you really need to take time to figure out, current or past, where this lack of trust is coming from when it comes to someone, a group of people, a team, whatever the case might be. So you can then find solutions to work not around it, but work through it. Because again, you don't need to love and trust or love and like these people and be best friends with them, but they're probably critical to your current work and your future opportunities. And therefore you're just going to be hurting yourself if you don't work on it. I mean, it's not the other people. The responsibility for you to trust is not the other person. Okay. So you need to figure that out for yourself. And then, you can just simply address the trust issue that you have with someone, being upfront. We talked about conflict, right? Well, this is one of those situations where you might have to confront it to address it. And so you can both and all move forward and through it. And so you need to just, have a genuine interest in wanting change and wanting improvement and wanting to build this relationship again, or for the first time. And therefore you need to kind of put your plan together to approach it and have that difficult conversation, be uncomfortable with having to confront it, because you know that it's in the best interest of yourself, them, and the work at hand. All right. And what that's going to involve is very simply, again, it's conversation. It's you being able to formulate your concerns in such a way that it allows the other person to be open and receptive to it, as opposed to if you come on to attack or defense, being defensive or accusatory or judgmental, then someone's going to shut down. So what you need to consider is, okay, what do I need to do to get this individual to be open and receiving this information, even though it might be trying or difficult, and therefore have this conversation. And the way you're going to do that is you're going to raise up the issue in a very positive way, and then you're going to ask questions for understanding, because that's your job here, is to gain understanding of why is this happening. Now, you might even need them to gain understanding from you as to why you've lost trust or haven't gained the trust of them. And therefore you need to, position that, but then you need to ask questions to get them engaged in the conversation. So what do you think about what I just said? So, do you have any, thoughts or views on it? Is there anything that you want to share and discuss in order for us to kind of work through this and move forward? So you want to actively be asking questions, but also then shutting up and listening, because that's all about you wanting to gain understanding of this other individual, their views, their position, their opinion, their belief systems, whatever the case might be, for then you both to collectively work through it, come up with a solution, an action plan, or even an agreement to disagree. So You just simply want to be able to listen. Now, another part of this type of conflict and conversation when it comes to rebuilding trust is also, especially if it has been trust that's been lost, but even if it's trust that hasn't been gained because you haven't contributed or haven't attempted to maybe get to know someone and really learn about them to understand, if you can trust them, well, then own up to that. Take accountability for your part and contribution to either the breakdown or the lack. Because that's going to be the first thing that someone's going to be very receiving and receptive of, and they'll recognize that, well, they're willing to account for their part, so I need to be accountable to mine. You have to almost model what it is that you want to receive. You can't just expect the other person to do it. I have one client that's mentioned to me a couple times that it's a two-way street, and I love that. It is a two-way street. Relationships are a two-way street. Leadership is a two-way street. And therefore, you have to be genuinely interested, genuinely approaching, genuinely asking questions, genuinely listening for understanding, and genuinely wanting to have a win-win situation for all parties. Okay? And then, you could at the end, let's say we're not working toward agree to disagree, because then you can work toward finding a new common starting point. Okay, so here's where we've been, and we don't need to spend time reflecting back beyond this conversation. So, what if we were to start right here and just move forward, forgetting everything that's happened? So you can even get to a point where you find a common starting point of which you now can build on. And that's a wonderful, beautiful, powerful thing in order for you to do. Then the last and most important part is going to be a reminder that you can't control how other people then take this and act on and follow through and start, acting or behaving or performing. You can only go and lead by example, set the model of kind of how does someone, leave this type of, situation and move forward and start demonstrating and performing and behaving in such a way that's productive and respectful and therefore trustworthy. So, even though you're wanting to come together and hear each other and understand each other and even kind of come up with a common starting point or agree to disagree, you can't control whether or not they walk away and either, follow through or abandon it. All you can do is, if that's what you want, then you move forward, demonstrating it and modeling it and leading by example. And, you'll feel better for it, and you'll be the one setting an example for everyone else, whether they listen to it or not. Okay. All right. So as I mentioned, those were our conversations both on conflict and trust, with some tips as to how to handle both. And they are both meant to be constructive. They're vital to business relationships, let alone personal relationships. And they are instrumental to you being successful in, pursuing and achieving your goals and aspirations at work or at home. All right. So if you have any comments, like I said, even if we go off the air and you still have comments or questions or challenges you need help with, then post them in the comment section and I'll keep an eye out for them over the next week. I'll get notified of them. Or you can reach out to me and schedule some time to have a one-on-one complimentary. It's not a sales pitch. It's just simply to help you get what you need to keep moving forward. All right. If you want to learn more about myself or Ball of Fire Coaching, as I said, we just rolled out our new website. I'm very excited. You can go to balloffirecoaching.com and, use the contact me page, or just learn, look around and learn more about myself and Ball of Fire Coaching. And we will be back here next Thursday at 1 Eastern time. And at any point in time you need to reach me, you can always link in with me, because that's a majority of where people reach out is through LinkedIn, through a direct message. and you can always do that. All right. So everybody have a great week, and I'll look forward to seeing you right back here next Thursday at 1 o'clock. Take care, everybody.